What's up, folks? Welcome back to Tactical Tortoise. My name is Trevi, and today we're talking about a little bit of controversy within the competitive Warhammer 40k community. Just recently, a bunch of rumors and what are potentially leaks for the new season of the GT format, as well as new balanced data slates for the entirety of Warhammer 40k were made available to the community. These have been doing the rounds in a bunch of different communities and include some potential changes, points changes, and mechanical changes to both individual factions and the format of the game as a whole. Now, I'm not going to get into the rumors in specific in this video. If you want me to break them down in a future video, I will. Honestly, they're dubious at best, and I don't really rate their veracity too much. Some of the changes that are being rumored are a little extravagant, I think, based on the contents of recent data slate updates, so I don't give them too much credit. Certainly a possibility that they're correct, but at this stage, I would give it a couple days before we have more concrete info. Now, that concrete info is exactly what I want to talk about today, and it's the reason for all this controversy surrounding competitive 40k players, and especially players that are part of communities or groups that have early access to new Games Workshop content. Now, this question probably comes up at least once a year, anytime there is a major rules change within the vicinity of a large event. And the question is that a lot of 40k communities, and especially some pretty competitive groups, get early access to new rules and updates from Games Workshop for the purpose of content creation and analysis for distribution to the wider community. Where this gets awkward is that those teams are also very active competitively in the scene. That does mean that members of the team that are competing internationally now have potentially forewarning of rules changes, units that are strong, or the ability to practice in a new format that other players don't have the ability to do so. In this case, however, we're looking at the release of both a rules update and a new GT format, almost adjacent to the rules cutoff for the season's largest event, that being the Las Vegas Open Warhammer 40k ITC Finals. This is enormous, typically 1,000 plus player super major that happens in ostensibly Las Vegas, Nevada, and capstones the ITC, its independent tournament circuit, although it's no longer independent. It's actually been integrated into Games Workshop's organized play team. It's the final and largest event of the season. This gives players the last chance to boost their scores. The player who wins LVO, given that they're most likely already highly scoring in the ITC, then gets the boost from winning the Las Vegas Open Championship, typically will score either very highly or win the ITC season, being number one in the standings for the end of the season. There's a little bit of money associated with that as well. Not a huge amount, not really life-changing money, but it should be noted that there is a monetary gain to be had here. Now, the issue is that the rules cutoff for the 2023 Las Vegas Open is January 16th, after what looks to be the release of the new GT season, that being Arcs of Omen that we've talked about, with some rumors and some previews from Games Workshop in a previous video. Now, the Arcs of Omen season looks to be totally different from previous seasons, and if the rumors that we discussed earlier are true, this might have also a transformative data slate that's releasing simultaneously with it. That's 2 weeks before the event proper, which is happening the last weekend of January 2023. Now, this means that individuals or groups that have early access to new rules may have the chance to look at and analyze, build lists around what might be an entirely transformed metagame and entirely new mechanics for army list construction and for a lot of unit types in the game, significantly in advance of when the general population gets it. That means they're going to be much better prepared, and especially in a game like Warhammer 40,000 that has an enormously long lead time between creating an army and actually getting it to the table. There's usually models to acquire, assemble, and paint, and already there are reports of models that may be getting buffed in these new rumored changes being sold out in a lot of different retailers. Now, we're still about a week and a half out from the end of the embargo for these new rules, which means that the general populace isn't going to get any concrete details for at least another couple days. Given how time sensitive this is, if LVO decides not to move their cutoff and everything releases when it is rumored to, then it would mean that those new rules are in place for LVO 2023, and those folks who have early access to it will have significantly longer to prepare for the event. Whether or not that's fair is the question being raised by the community at large, and whether or not either LVO should make a blanket ruling about these new rules or move their rules cutoff date not to include any new rules or data slates from the previous season. Now, this isn't the first time that this question has been raised by the community. There have been significant rules changes in advance or in the proximity of large events in the past, and the accusations of, I don't necessarily want to say foul play, but I guess, foreknowledge of new rules has certainly been leveled at these organizations that have it. And so I guess it begs the question how much this affects the competitive scene, how much this affects the final results of these players and organizations who are doing so well in the competitive scene, and also maybe getting early access to new Warhammer 40k rules, and whether or not for the competitive integrity of the game, players who do have this kind of early access should even be allowed to participate in organized or competitive play. Like I mentioned before in the video, 40k does have a really long lead time, and I do think that there is certainly a little bit of a conflict if you have early access to new rules and then also have the ability to adapt an army to fit within that framework well before anyone else gets the opportunity to take a look at them. This is something that could also be solved by the community, individual events, or event circuits at large by just increasing their rules cutoff point to significantly long, although I know that's extremely unpopular and events don't tend to do that. The problem with that is that in order for it to have a meaningful impact, you'd have to just sort of do it universally across most of the competitive scene, and that's very difficult to convince events to do. So I'm not sure that that's happening, but I do think that it's certainly something that Games Workshop should keep in mind, and their organized play team probably should make some action to correct if they're serious about supporting competitive play and highly competitive play, especially with their new US Open circuits. Given that LVO is the largest and probably most important competitive event of the season, I do think that Frontline Gaming themselves also has a little bit of an obligation to preserve the competitive integrity of an event like that, and potentially move their rules cutoff dates in order to keep their event clear from any questions like this. Really, it's kind of a nebulous issue and a bit of an open question, so I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this potential, I guess, conflict of interest between teams that want to play competitively but also want to get early access to rules and therefore maybe gain an advantage from that. Is that good? Is that bad? Is the benefit that the community gets from these competitive players having early access and being able to do analysis and create content based on these rules, is that beneficial enough for the community to, maybe just let the small benefit that they get from foreknowledge of the rules slide? Anyway, thanks for watching all the way to the end of the video. Big thanks to everybody who supports the channel, either over on Patreon at patreon.com/tacticaltortoise, YouTube channel members, Twitch subscribers. All you people are great. I love you. Remember to keep it classy, folks, and have happy wargaming.